If you've ever sat down to work, determined to finally power through, only to find your mind scattered an hour later, you know the feeling, that internal battle, the gritted teeth, the forced effort, the mental strain of trying to make yourself focus. It feels like a test of willpower, and when it fails, it feels like a personal failure. This is the modern model of focus. We treat it like a finite resource we must ration, or a muscle we can exhaust through sheer effort. We chase it with caffeine, with apps that block distractions, with complex productivity systems. And when we finally achieve a sliver of deep concentration, it often comes at a cost: mental fatigue, burnout, a sense that it's unsustainable. We're approaching focus all wrong. We're trying to force a state of mind through aggression, when history shows us that the most legendary focus ever demonstrated came from something entirely different. Not force, but a profound, cultivated absorption. To see it, we need to go to a small, rocky island off the coast of Japan in the year 1612. Two master swordsmen are about to meet for a duel that will decide who is the greatest in the land. One is Sasaki Kojiro, known as the Demon of the Western Provinces, a technical genius who has perfected his signature move, the swallow cut. His opponent is Miyamoto Musashi. And as the appointed hour arrives, Kojiro is there, poised, ritualistically prepared, his focus sharpened to a razor's edge by anticipation and perfect form. But Musashi is nowhere to be seen. Musashi arrives late, deliberately. He rose to the island not with a fine sword, but with a long wooden oar he had carved into a blade on the journey over. To any observer, this looks like arrogance or madness. But it wasn't. It was the external manifestation of an internal state so complete, so single-pointed, that the conventional rules of timing, of weaponry, of ritual simply did not apply. In that moment, Musashi wasn't fighting a battle of willpower. He wasn't psyching himself up or suppressing doubt. He was operating from a place of total unity between his intention and his action. The Japanese concept for this is Ichigyo Zammai. Ichi means one. Gyo means action or practice. Zammai means absorption or samadhi, a state of intense concentration. Ichigyo Zammai is the practice of unifying your entire being into a single, undivided stream of action. It is the samurai's secret to extreme focus. And it is the exact opposite of the exhausting willpower battle we're familiar with. This video is not just a history lesson. It's a practical dismantling of a broken model. We're going to move from the idea of focus as force to focus as absorption. We'll start by analyzing that critical duel on Ganryu Island, not for its martial drama, but as a clear, historical case study in applied Ichigyo Zammai. We'll then deconstruct the state itself, what it actually is, psychologically and neurologically. We'll bridge that to modern science, showing why this ancient practice is a replicable mental technology. And finally, we'll translate it into the smallest step, most actionable technique you can use today to forge this kind of focus in your own work and life. The promise is this: to stop chasing focus like a scarce resource you must violently capture, and to start cultivating it as a sustainable state you can enter by design. And it all begins by understanding what Musashi did not do on that island. He did not meet force with greater force. He did not fight distraction with more effort. His focus emerged from a different source entirely. To see that source in action, we need to look closer at the duel itself. So let's go to that island. Ganryu Island, 1612. The most celebrated duel in Japanese history is about to begin. On one side, Sasaki Kojiro, known as the Demon of the Western Provinces. He is a master of the long sword. His technique, the swallow cut, legendary. He arrives early, meticulously performing his pre-duel rituals. He sharpens his blade. He meditates. He focuses his aggression. He is preparing for a contest of supreme skill and force, and he expects his opponent to do the same. Miyamoto Musashi does none of this. Historical accounts say he overslept. He arrives late, deliberately. He rose to the island not with a finely crafted sword, but with a spare wooden oar which he carves into a crude, elongated weapon on the boat ride over. To any observer, especially Kojiro, these are the actions of a man who is disrespectful, unprepared, or even frightened. But that is the surface-level reading, the myth of the duel as a clash of personalities. If we look deeper, through the lens of Ichigyo Zammai, every one of Musashi's unconventional actions reveals itself as a deliberate, external manifestation of an internal, single-pointed state. His late arrival wasn't rudeness. It was a strategic removal of the waiting period, that agonizing stretch of time where anticipation breeds anxiety, where the mind can split its intention between the present moment and the feared future. He eliminated that distraction entirely. And the or? It wasn't a lack of respect for the duel. It was the ultimate expression of total absorption in the act of combat, not the trappings of combat. By choosing a longer, unfamiliar weapon, he forced himself into a state of pure problem-solving. He couldn't rely on muscle memory from 10,000 sword drills. He had to be completely, fluidly present with this one object, in this one moment. His awareness and his action were fused. That is Ichigyo Zammai made visible. Now, contrast this with Kojiro. His preparation was perfect, but it was also anticipated. It followed a script. The sharpening, the meditation, the focused aggression, these were all steps in a ritual he and his culture believed led to victory. His intention, though powerful, was divided. Part of his mind was on the ritual itself, on performing the role of the noble warrior correctly. Another part was fixed on the outcome, on winning, on his legendary technique. When the moment came, Kojiro unleashed his famous swallow cut, and Musashi, with his oar, struck him down with a single blow. The duel was over in seconds. The lesson here dismantles a core myth we still carry about focus. We often believe extreme focus looks like Kojiro's intense, aggressive, perfect preparation. It's the grim determination, the furrowed brow, the white-knuckled grip. We think if we just ritualize our environment and intensify our effort, focus will come. But Musashi shows us the opposite. His focus was quiet. It wasn't about adding more effort, but about subtracting everything that wasn't the act itself. No divided intention, no internal commentary, no investment in how he looked doing it. His mind was not a clenched fist, but a clear stream flowing in one direction. The or, the lateness, the apparent disregard for convention, these weren't signs of a lack of focus. They were the proof of it. His entire being was absorbed in the single, chosen point, prevailing in this encounter. Every decision served that one point, even if it seemed irrational to an outside observer locked in a different mindset. This is why the duel is the perfect case study. It takes this internal, abstract state of single-pointedness and gives it undeniable, historical action. We can see the principle at work under the highest possible stakes, and it raises the critical question. If this state isn't about intense aggression or perfect conditions, what exactly is it? What is the precise mechanics of that single-pointed mind? Because if we can define it, we can move from admiring it in a samurai to understanding how to cultivate it in ourselves. So what exactly is this state? It has a name, Ichigyo Zammai, and to understand it, we need to break that name down. Ichi means one, single, undivided, and Zammai is a term borrowed from Zen Buddhism, meaning absorption or samadhi, a state of total, meditative immersion. Put them together, and Ichigyo Zammai is the practice of unifying your action and your awareness into one, single, undivided stream. It's not just doing one thing. It's becoming one with the doing. This is the critical distinction we often miss. Our modern chase for focus usually looks like one of two things. The first is multitasking, juggling tabs, notifications, and half-thoughts, believing that handling more at once is a sign of capability. The second is what we might call hyperscheduling or forced concentration, white-knuckling our way through a task, using sheer willpower to suppress every stray thought and distraction. Both of these are forms of division. In the first, your attention is physically split. In the second, your mind is at war with itself. Part of you is doing the work, and another part is the taskmaster, violently policing every lapse. Ichigyo Zammai is the opposite of that internal civil war. Look back at the duel. Musashi wasn't suppressing his fear, his calculations, or his awareness of Kojiro. He was channeling all of it, every sense, every instinct, every cognitive resource, into the single, chosen act of crossing the distance and making one cut. His mind wasn't empty. It was full, completely saturated with one thing. Thought, perception, and action were not separate processes to be managed. They were one unified event. This is why it's not a mystical samurai superpower. It's a replicable mental technology. We now have the language of psychology and neuroscience to describe exactly what's happening in that state. When you achieve this single-pointed absorption, a key shift occurs in your brain. The default mode network, the background noise circuit responsible for self-referential thought, daydreaming, and mental time travel, quiets down. Its constant chatter about the past, the future, and your own performance attenuates. In its place, the task-positive networks light up. Your perception narrows to the immediate sensory feedback of your action. Time distorts. Self-consciousness falls away. You've entered what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called a flow state. But Ichigyo Zammai gives us a more precise, actionable frame. It's flow directed by a prior, clear intention. It's not just losing yourself in an activity passively. It's actively choosing one point of absorption and pouring your entire being into it. So the mechanics are clear. It's the unification of intention, attention, and action. The ichi is the clear, singular choice, the what you will do. The zammai is the total immersion, the how you will be while doing it. No division, no internal commentary. Just the seamless execution of the chosen act. This dismantles the biggest myth, that extreme focus is about having no thoughts. It's not. It's about having all your thoughts, all your awareness, flowing in the same direction. The enemy isn't a busy mind. The enemy is a divided one. And this raises the next inevitable question. If this is a state our brains are capable of, if it's a documented psychological phenomenon and not just legend, then how do we trigger it? What's the modern science behind making this single-pointed mind accessible to us? That's where the evidence gets really compelling. So, if our brains are capable of this single-pointed state, what's actually happening inside our heads when we enter it? The answer lies in a fundamental shift between two major brain networks. For most of our day, when we're not actively engaged in a task, our brain defaults to a chattering, self-referential state. Neuroscientists call this the default mode network. It's the home of mental time travel, replaying past conversations, worrying about future deadlines, and constructing our sense of self. It's also the engine of procrastination and overthinking. But when you fully commit to a single act, like Musashi committing to that one cut, something remarkable happens. The default mode network quiets down, and in its place, a different set of regions lights up, the task-positive network. This is the brain's machinery for focused attention. It's not about thinking harder. It's about thinking in one unified stream. This transition is the neurological signature of flow. Studies on monotasking show that when we give one activity our undivided attention, brain activity becomes more efficient. We're not using more energy, we're wasting less. We stop burning cognitive fuel on self-criticism, second-guessing, and mental context switching. And this is where the modern cost of distraction becomes painfully clear. Research from UC Irvine and others shows that task switching, that quick check of email, that glance at a notification, incurs a switching cost. It can take several minutes for your brain to fully re-engage with the original task. Each switch fragments your attention, leaving cognitive residue. It's death by 1,000 cuts to your focus. Musashi's preparation for the duel was the ultimate rejection of this cost. By arriving late, by using an or, he wasn't just being unconventional. He was systematically eliminating variables that could split his attention. He engineered a situation where only one thing existed, the act of the duel itself. His mind had no room for what if, or should I. All cognitive resources were allocated to one point. This is why the state feels effortless. When you're in it, the part of your brain that normally exerts effortful control, the prefrontal cortex, actually steps back. You're not forcing focus through willpower. You've simply aligned all your systems toward a single goal, and the brain's automatic processes take over. Time distorts because the brain's internal clock, which relies on processing novel events, has nothing new to report. You're fully absorbed, so the science validates the samurai's experience. Ichigyo Zammai isn't a mystical trance. It's the conscious triggering of an efficient, innate cognitive mode. It's moving from the distracted, self-conscious default mode into the unified, task-positive state of flow. The enemy was never a busy mind. It was a divided one, and division has a measurable, neurological tax, which leaves us with the most practical question of all. We know what it is, and we know why it works. So how do we actually do it? How do we make this single-pointed state accessible in the middle of a normal, distraction-filled day? The answer is simpler than you might think. You don't need a wooden sword or a deserted island. You just need to make one cut. This is the modern translation of Ichigyo Zammai. It is the deliberate, undistracted execution of one mundane, chosen task. Not a complex ritual, but a single-pointed action. The practice has two non-negotiable parameters. First, a short, fixed duration. We're not talking about a 4-hour deep work marathon. We're talking about a container so small, your brain can't panic about it. 25 minutes is a classic, proven span. Second, a singular, predefined act. Not work on the report. That's a category. It's write the introduction to the quarterly report, or clean the kitchen counter. One act with a clear finish line. The power is in the preparation, in the cut that defines the boundary. Before the timer starts, you declare your intention, out loud or written down. For the next 25 minutes, I will draft the email to the client. This is your cut. You are severing this task from the chaos of everything else you could be doing. You are giving your brain a single target. Then you begin. And here is the only rule: no interruption. You do not check your phone. You do not get up for water because you're avoiding a tough sentence. You do not let your mind wander to your dinner plans. If a thought about something else arises, and it will, you acknowledge it, and you gently return to the one act you chose. This is the practice. Not perfection, but return. Contrast this with how we usually work. Open-ended, with a browser with 15 tabs, a phone buzzing, and a vague sense that we should be productive. That environment forces your brain into constant decision-making. Should I check that notification? Should I research this other thing? Am I doing this right? That's the divided mind we measured in the last chapter. It's cognitive whiplash. The 25-minute, single-act container eliminates those decisions. The boundaries are set. Your job is not to manage the universe for that span. Your job is to simply inhabit the act. This constraint, paradoxically, creates freedom. It tells your anxious prefrontal cortex, you can stand down. The path is clear. And in that space, the brain can disengage from self-evaluation and fully absorb into the work. This is how you make the historical state accessible. You're not trying to summon the focus of a life-or-death duel. You're using the same architecture Musashi used. One weapon, one opponent, one intention. Your oar is your pen. Your island is this defined block of time. The single-pointed mind emerges not from force, but from the simplicity of the container. So, your first cut. Today, choose one thing. Set a timer for 25 minutes. State your intention, and execute. That's it. The secret isn't in doing more. It's in doing one thing completely. But this leads to the final, most important question. What happens after the timer rings? Is this just a neat trick for one task? Or can it become something more? That's the final question, isn't it? The timer rings. You've had a taste of that single-pointed clarity. And then life floods back in. Emails, notifications, the next item on the list. So, is Ichigyo Zammai just a neat trick for one task, a temporary escape from the noise? Or can it become your default state? The answer lies not in the single session, but in what the session builds. The true secret the samurai understood wasn't a momentary technique, but a forge. A place where, through consistent heat and hammering, raw attention is shaped into something durable. Your daily practice of that single, defined act, that 25-minute cut, is that forge. Every time you execute that ritual, choose one thing, set the boundary, immerse completely. You are doing more than finishing a task. You are performing a specific kind of neural training. You're telling your brain's attention networks, this is the pattern. One stream, no exits, and the brain, being the adaptive organ it is, begins to wire for that pattern. The frantic, costly switching between the default mode network and task-positive networks becomes less automatic. The pathway into sustained focus gets worn smooth, like a trail through a forest that's walked every day. What was once a deliberate, effortful state starts to become more accessible, more default. This is the critical shift that separates a life hack from an identity. Willpower-based techniques ask you to constantly fight against your nature. They create a persona of the disciplined person who is always at war with distraction. It's exhausting and it's fragile. Ichigyo Zammai, practiced consistently, works differently. It doesn't create a fighter, it forges a craftsman. The identity isn't, I am someone who battles procrastination, but I am a person who does one thing at a time. That's a fundamental rewrite. It moves the effort from the moment of temptation, the don't check your phone struggle, to the moment of ritual setup. The decision is front-loaded. For this container of time, I am doing this. The battle is won before it begins. So, your framework isn't a collection of tips. It's this. Use your daily life as the raw material. Your forge is any 25-minute block you claim. Your hammer is the unwavering commitment to that one act. And what you're building is a resilient, focused mind. The benefits compound in quiet, profound ways. The mental friction of starting any meaningful work diminishes because you've trained the startup sequence 100 times. Resilience against distraction grows, not because you've built a higher wall, but because you've strengthened the gravitational pull of your single point. The anxiety of an overwhelming workload softens because you have a trusted, repeatable process for making any part of it manageable. This was Musashi's ultimate principle, carried off the dueling ground and into the craft of life. Unified action, not just in a fight for survival, but in the carving of a bakkin, the writing of a scroll, the practice of a tea ceremony. The principle was the fabric, not the event. Your modern life is your dojo. The pressure of a deadline, the chaos of an inbox, the pull of 1,000 digital voices. This is your Ganryu Island. And your carved, or your single-pointed weapon, is this practiced ability to define one thing and become completely absorbed in its execution. Not as a frantic effort, but as a calm, repeatable craft. So you close the loop. You began by seeing focus as a battle of will, a struggle you often lost. You discovered a historical secret that reframed it as a state of unified action. You saw the science explaining why that state dissolves resistance. You learned the simplest way to practice it, one cut, one container. And now you see the path to making it yours. Not a secret you visit, but a nature you forge. Set the timer. Make the cut. Build the focus. Day by day, session by session, you are not just doing your work. You are becoming the person who can.